All right. Well, yeah, I'm very excited to be here tonight. Get back to the slides here. Here we go. Talk about GitHub Copilot Dev Days. What we have on tap for tonight is getting my clicker to work. That's the first thing there. Oh, PowerPoint was taking a nap and then catching up. All right, so I want to talk about GitHub Copilot and the GitHub Copilot coding agent, your AI accelerator for every workflow from editor to the enterprise. How many of you use GitHub in one form or another for source control? Okay, exactly. How many of you are using GitHub Copilot today? Okay, good. So kind of the idea is GitHub Copilot being on GitHub is we want this to be the agentic software development platform, right? So Copilot and AI and everything is right there where your code lives, but we're not going to lock you into anything, right? We also integrate with Jira, we integrate with Terraform, we integrate with JFrog, et cetera. And we'll see how, so we give you choice also when it comes to the models and things. So spend about hopefully 30 minutes here talking about the evolution of Copilot, how Copilot is available everywhere now, Copilot's newest capabilities. This resource is to learn. I'm not going to go through every slide there, but if you've seen me present before, you know how I operate. There's already a PDF out there that you can download, and a lot of these slides will have links and QR codes and things, so you can dive in and learn more, whether it's seeing YouTube videos, getting more hands-on lab experience, diving into our documentation, et cetera. And then David and Claire will spend some time talking about how GitHub uses GitHub, how GitHub uses GitHub Copilot. So you can learn from very large enterprise some of the tips and tricks and ways to use Copilot to be even more effective. And then we have a hands-on lab. There's multiple to pick from, but the one that we're going to lead everybody through is the coding agent hands-on lab. All right, so we're talking about the evolution. Back in 2021, give or take, Copilot started out as code completion. And that was kind of the bread and butter, the core of Copilot for the first couple of years. Now we're into this agentic wave where it's not just having Copilot as chat in VS Code or JetBrains or whatever, but being able to actually assign tasks to an agent, have that agent do the work in the background, let you know when it's time to review the pull request. So keeping the human in the loop to make sure that everything Copilot is doing is exactly what you want it to do. So, let it do a lot of the coding work, especially for the more mundane things. You review, make sure it's on track, and then approve it to get merged into main. And down the road, we're looking at things like, teams of agents being able to do a lot of this stuff. So in the past, when it was just humans working together, yes, we have Git flow and things like that to help guide how we're doing things, but pretty inconsistent a lot of times as to when's design getting done, when's the coding getting done, when's all the non-functional requirements getting taken care of, the scalability, the accessibility, et cetera. So a lot of cases, this might be what the flow looked like. What we envision today is humans working with agents, even beginning at the brainstorming and the brainstorming and the specification writing, and then saying, okay, yeah, I approve that plan that you've helped me come up with. Let's get into the details, the functional and technical details. Okay, nope, let's go back and kind of review and rework that a little bit. Okay, we're ready to go. Hand it off and code it. Other agents coming in and doing reviews, maybe finding security fixes. Copilot AutoFix coming in and saying, hey, here's the lines of code I would change to address that security vulnerability, the human approving that, the code changes getting made, Copilot even participating in the code review, helping to ensure that your coding standards are being applied consistently, because you've got those coding standards codified in custom instructions and custom agents and things like that. Again, human approval. And of course, before we merge things into main or go to production, you've got the human approval there. So you're striking that balance of AI and agentic work with the human approval and everything. So I don't know if you've seen recently, there have been some stories about major retail websites, having downtime and some of that being attributed back to maybe being a little too free with allowing AI to make the changes without enough human review and things like that. So one GitHub Copilot, kind of everywhere you code is the idea. And this is just a quick snapshot. On github.com, being able to assign a task to an agent, or even from the mobile app on your tablet or phone, maybe somebody sends you an issue, maybe it's a bug report, and you can assign from the mobile app. Maybe that's when I'm riding the light rail back home. I can assign that to the agent. When I get back home, I can open up my laptop and there's a pull request ready for me to review. In VS Code, that's where it all started and where it continues to evolve and grow. But we want to provide choice. So it's not just VS Code, Visual Studio, JetBrains, family of IDEs, Eclipse, Vim, Xcode, etc. Something that's relatively new and picking up steam, the Copilot CLI. So right from the terminal, being able to prompt Copilot and have it do the work and help steer it to do the right thing and everything, even before opening up the IDE. Something else that's new. Maybe you get a notification in Teams that says, hey, I think somebody just maybe found a bug in our website. Okay, at Copilot, you go off and investigate that, see what the problem is. And also working with, we know not everybody uses GitHub issues and projects. We have, Jira is one of the most popular integrations for GitHub. So we just recently announced the public preview of integration with Jira to be able to take a user story or a bug or something in Jira and assign that to Copilot. And I'll have a little more detail on that in a moment. Again, choice. Yes, we started out with a single model, but now you've got dozens of models to choose from. I believe it's, I lose track. But again, you'll be able to download the PDF of this and be able to go to our documentation page where you can see all of the models that are available and even some information about strengths and weaknesses for different models to help you kind of get a feeling for, which model should you be using maybe for a retail site, or if you're working for an automaker and you're writing code that's going to be controlling lane keep assist in my car, pick a good model for that kind of code as well. So there are primarily three types of agents. We see agent mode. That's kind of like your paired digital assistant. So as you're working right there in VS Code, providing it prompts and following along what it's doing. So kind of like a pair programmer that's sitting right there with you. You're having that conversation in real time. Then there's the coding agent, where that's your digital assistant that, think of it as if you were working with somebody else, but they were in another room or another state or another country. You might hand them some work, wait for them to complete the work, and then review their pull request and say, hey, maybe we need to address this looks good, but based on my experience, this particular algorithm is not going to scale well. Let's go back. Maybe we need to make that multi-threaded or other things. Work with the agent over time to get the best code possible. And then code review. like I mentioned earlier, scaling your coding standards by codifying your coding standards in Copilot instructions and other files, then having the agent do those code reviews. Those standards are going to get taken into account every time. We're human. We know the coding standards, but do we keep those at the front of our mind every time we do a code review? Maybe, maybe not. But having Copilot do the code reviews, they're going to take those kind of things into account every time. I was talking with David and Claire earlier. I've got an example in one of my demo environments right now where the code review agent came back and said, hey, this website looks fine, but when screen readers are trying to process this for accessibility, the way you've got the elements stacked there, the screen reader is not going to be able to interpret it properly. That's not something I would see just with the naked eye, or if I don't have experience with accessibility type stuff, I might not even realize what type of mistake I'm making there. But code review agent will be able to catch those kind of things. Another thing we've launched is Agent HQ, again, to be the platform of choice. Yes, we'd love everybody to select Copilot, but now from within GitHub and within Visual Studio Code inside a GitHub Copilot chat, you can select, do you want to use Copilot? Do you want to use Claude Code? Do you want to use OpenAI Codex? We're looking at adding other types of agents in the future. And a key thing about that is you only need a GitHub Copilot license to be able to do that. You don't have to have a Claude license and an OpenAI license, et cetera. That GitHub Copilot license will allow you to use all of those agents within GitHub. All right, I'm going to keep moving along here. So this is kind of our overview of the AI-powered developer software development lifecycle, right? All the phases: planning, coding, verify, deploy, and operate. Couple of things like now I mentioned earlier, planning. People are using Jira for planning and tracking epics, features, user stories, bugs, etc. Well, now this is in public preview. I can go in here and I can say, I'm going to assign this item to Copilot, and Copilot's going to go off and say, okay, I'm analyzing and reviewing your question, I've begun working on a PR, and we'll update you when it's complete. And then come back and update the item in Jira when that PR is complete. So that nice tight integration there. We also have similar integration with Azure Boards, part of Azure DevOps. So I can assign work to Copilot. It's going to come in and say, okay, I've started this work. I've created a draft pull request. A few minutes later, it'll come back and say, okay, this pull request is ready for your review. There's a link here. There's a durable link that's always going to show up over here to have that nice tight integration between tools like Azure Boards and such. And then when we get down to the actual developer planning, let's say I'm assigned work for a new feature. I'm probably not just going to go off and just start slamming code. I'm going to sit down and think, okay, for this feature, what fields do we need to add to the database? How do I need to structure the API? What elements do I need to put within the user interface? But being able to use plan mode within Visual Studio Code to help me work through all of those details, and even ask me some questions, perhaps even going back to the coding standards and such. Again, I'll provide a link where you can download all these. So dive in. James Montemagno put a great 5-minute demo out there about using plan mode and everything. So yeah, dive into those things. Coding. The big one we're talking about these days is the GitHub Copilot coding agent. Handles an entire pull request workflow so you can ship faster. Now, one of the things about this is, the way we see Copilot's going to help you with the implementation and everything. It's not going to do literally everything for you. Our vice president of developer relations, Martin Woodward. I love what he said. He said, AI can't solve problems. People solve problems. AI can help you with the implementation. So yeah, you're always going to want that human oversight and judgment in place, kind of a thing. But yeah, whether it's working on existing PRs, summarizing changes, yeah, Copilot's really good now at when I create a PR on GitHub, it'll generate the description. And I'll tell you what, it's going to write a much more thorough description than I would ever take the time to do. So that's very beneficial for my teammates and colleagues, right? And a lot of other things. So the idea is give it a task, whether that's an issue in GitHub or a user story in Azure Boards or Jira. It's going to go off and do the work in the background and let you know when that pull request is ready for your review. Now, context is key here. So how do you make sure that Copilot has the context that it needs? You don't just say, necessarily, oh, let's add multi-factor authentication, go. No, what are the details? What are the constraints you're working with and everything? Putting those details into the description of that user story. But going beyond that, there's multiple ways to provide customization information to Copilot. And just within the last month or so, we came out with some great documentation there that talks about the different ways to customize, whether it's through custom instructions. So that, that might be where you put like your coding standards for this particular project. Also some of the do's and don'ts. What are we not going to be doing in this project to give it the constraints and things? Great examples out at the awesome Copilot repository. Great examples of custom instructions. I'm going to talk about custom agents, skills, etc. So that's a fantastic resource for this. There's also organization level custom instructions. So since your code is on GitHub, you can go to the organization level and say, hey, here's our general coding standards. If we're going to start a new app, this is the tech stack we would want to be working with. Maybe I'm doing .NET and I'm using Playwright for testing and deploying to an Azure Kubernetes service, or is our preferred stack. So codify those kind of organization-wide things there. And also you can have personal custom instructions. So you can go into the personal custom instructions and say things like, hey, I'm a senior developer. I'm well experienced in these areas. So if you're talking about these things, just give me the bullet points. But, oh, guess what? I'm new to actually developing AI applications. So when it comes to putting AI into my app, yeah, you can explain things in a little more detail or whatever. The example so biggest part of my job is talking to enterprise customers about GitHub and DevOps in general and stuff. And every so often I have the opportunity to talk to customers from another country, and there might be translators in the room. So do this with Japanese customers all the time. I'll go into my personal instructions and say, always respond to me in Japanese. And then I'll go back to Copilot chat and ask some question, and you see a bunch of Japanese getting spit out on the screen, and I'll say, I can't read that. And I'll look to somebody and say, is that actually answering the question that I asked, or something like that? So just kind of a novel way to demonstrate the personal custom instructions. Custom agents, being able to provide very tailored prompts and things. So you can kind of see here in the screenshot, Rails API developer or UI engineer or Kubernetes architect. You can extend this out to be, an accessibility specialist. You can come up with all kinds of things. And a lot of our integration partners have created custom agents. If you're using JFrog Artifactory for binary management, or deploying with Octopus Deploy, or Launch Darkly for managing feature flags and all of those things. Again, there's a reference here to the awesome Copilot repository. So you can find examples of those custom agents, and custom agents are just markdown files. It's just natural English that says, hey, this agent is focused on, maybe it's a Terraform from HashiCorp. This custom agent is focused on writing infrastructure as code scripts. So you might even put in there, do not touch any code. You're just to write Azure Bicep, type of files or whatever it may be, kind of a thing. Skills have also emerged with Claude and other tools, right? So I can be working with in chat, and I can kind of summon, I can say / whatever and summon a particular skill, but also skills will be kind of brought up, on demand based on the nature of the prompt or whatever. So again, you can codify these just within natural language files and keep them in your repository and everything. One thing I should have mentioned with the custom agents is you can keep these at the repo level. You can also define agents and have them shared across your entire GitHub organization. So really scale those custom agents internally that way. I know I'm flying through things. We got a lot to cover here tonight. And again, you've got all these links to dive in and see more as well. Model Context Protocol. This is plugging other tools directly into the AI. So maybe maybe in GitHub Copilot chat, I want to say, hey, what Jira items are currently assigned to me? That's going to reach out and use that Atlassian Jira MCP server. Or maybe I'm deploying to Azure or working with LaunchDarkly, So right from chat, I can say, hey, is that feature flag still turned on? I thought this went to production. So shouldn't that feature flag be turned off now? But Model Context Protocol, I love this analogy that I heard. Started out, we had Copilot extensions. I don't know what, other AI tools had, but everybody had some way to integrate. Well, MCP, Model Context Protocol, is really like the USB-C cable for plugging other tools into AI tools. So, very standard protocol now. We did a lot of work recently. This has been out for a while, but just since the first of the year, added a lot of functionality and capabilities to the Copilot CLI. And the other great thing about it, just the nature of the way VS Code works, right? I can go into the terminal in VS Code and summon the GitHub Copilot CLI. So then I've got, a nice mix of doing things from the terminal or doing things from chat within VS Code. Or whatever I feel is going to work best for me. Another thing we're experimenting with, agentic workflows. I'm sure, if you're using GitHub Actions for build, test, deploy, and everything, that's kind of a very fixed workflow. But what if you need something a little more fuzzy? You want to leverage GitHub Actions, but create a workflow that says, hey, I need you to go look out over the pull requests that were completed this week, the issues that were completed this week. Did we have any big failures with CI/CD, et cetera? Give me in this case, a daily repo report. What was all the activity going on there? So being able to bring AI to those actions workflows in a lot of different ways. And there's great examples out there of different ways to use that when you look at that. github.github.com/gh-aw for agentic workflows. App modernization, being able to modernize .NET and Java apps especially. I'm just going to highlight some of the statistics here. Now that people are using these tools, some are reporting 80% reduction on overall efforts for upgrading apps, 4 times more efficiency in the modernization process, even working with COBOL apps, being able to say, okay, all of our senior COBOL developers have left, so all that tribal knowledge is gone. But hey, Copilot, go analyze that COBOL code, tell me in detail what it's doing so that I can take that output, feed it into Copilot to now create a .NET or a Java or a Go app or whatever you want based on the detailed functionality of what COBOL app might be doing. Getting into verify. So we've got safeguards built in whenever Copilot coding agent generates code. We're gonna call our code scanning tools to run security scans on those changed files. We'll do that for you for agent generated code, even if you don't have GitHub Advanced Security licenses for your developers. And in this case, it's saying, okay, this is a GitHub Actions workflow. You need to adjust these permissions. Copilot will say, okay, yep, I'm going to go ahead and make those changes. And here's the updated fixes. We now have, kind of based off of that same code scanning engine for security vulnerabilities, we have a version of that looks for code quality issues. Is this code maintainable? Is this code scalable? Et cetera. So running that with Copilot or on Copilot generated code. I mentioned code review also. So now being able to have Copilot do those initial code reviews so you don't have to spend as much time necessarily just looking for the syntactical things or the common things that people might miss relative to your coding standards, or I mentioned the accessibility things and such. There's a great blog post just from a couple of weeks ago that talks about the lessons we've learned already from how we were able to take these learnings and make the code review process even more effective and everything. What am I doing on time? I got about 5 minutes left. So when we get into the operations phase at the organization level, but also at the enterprise level, being able to have dashboards for your leaders to be able to see, what models are being used most. What's the adoption? We've given everybody Copilot licenses, but we've only got 72% adoption. Why aren't more people leveraging Copilot? Do we need to provide some more training and such, or, and just lots of detailed information there. And then scale and governance, also in that enterprise setting, being able to say things like what models are allowed, or even what Copilot features or capabilities do you want turned on? When we talk about things like Agent HQ, do you want to allow those other Claude Code and Codex agents yet? Or do you want to, maybe you want to limit those to just one team to kind of try those out before you open that up for everybody? And you control that here through the control plane. Get the last one here, talking about MCP servers. You can create your own MCP internal registry, so to speak. And then you can say, okay, is this internal list of MCP servers? Is this our suggested list of MCP servers? Or is this our allow list, meaning our developers in this company can only use these selected MCP servers? So bringing those control options where needed in enterprises, especially regulated industries and things like that. So Copilot can help with everything from design, architecture, through coding, testing, bug fixing, everything. All right, yep, I want to skip ahead here. So yes, definitely try this out on your code base and everything. So now, like I said, I am going to give you the opportunity to download this, and I'll bring this QR code up later. Also, it's github.com/Dave Burnison MS/presentations. And you go to this page and you can see right now I'm highlighting this particular presentation, but you can see my past presentations as well. And this is where you can download this presentation as a PDF and other presentations as well. Now, hopefully, I'll bring this slide up again later too. Hopefully everybody caught the sweepstakes. Please register for that. But just know, yeah, when you go into and look at all these resources, anybody working in an enterprise setting, definitely go check out the monthly enterprise roundup. I curate all of the posts across our blogs, our change logs, new YouTube videos. we may have launched updates to the CLI a few months ago, but maybe this month the documentation team has come out with a guide for best practices or something like that. I'll highlight those types of things in here as well. Okay, now I will turn it over to David and Claire to talk about how GitHub uses GitHub, and then we'll get into the hands-on lab. And while we're doing the lab, we can also answer questions and things. Get this out of the way.
Hi folks, how is everybody? Doing well? Is all took Paddy's day off to come and listen to us talk about AI? Yeah?
No green beer here tonight.
No green beer. Is my screen bright enough? Can everybody see that? So I'm just going to start by saying there is an awful lot of context on some of these slides because we're pulling real world examples. I'll drop a link so you can download the slides, and there's a bunch of informative links at the end, all right? So there was a show of hands earlier. It seems like quite a lot of people here use GitHub. You have used Copilot before. Can I get a show of hands if you use Copilot or specifically CCA more than once a day? Copilot coding agent. If you're kicking off agentic tasks, would you have used it more than once a day? Okay. All right, cool. A few people. All right, super stuff. So we're going to talk through a couple of different things. There's myself, David O'Regan, and there's Claire Beck. And what we are going to talk about is a crash course in how we use Copilot at GitHub to build GitHub. So we're going to be talking across a couple of different surfaces, going to give you some real world examples, both from writing PRs, writing issues, and then how do we, as two engineering managers, use Copilot to also help our teams. So I am David O'Regan. I'm an engineering manager on the Copilot platform org. Specifically, I am looking after the Copilot mission control team. If anybody is using mission control or UI, that is mostly what I handle. And we have Claire Beck, who is our newest engineering manager, joining us on the engineering side for Copilot Agent Platform. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to break the talk into two parts. We're going to look at some real world workflows for developers, and then we're also going to talk about the management side, because Copilot and AI, as it gets more advanced for developers, engineering managers, PMs, people in management roles also need to be able to keep up to make sure that these tools stay effective on both sides. So I'm going to talk through what does it look like to move from issues into pull requests using our coding agent. And there's going to be a lot of acronyms, but I'll explain as we go. CCA is, shorthand for the Copilot coding agent. We have mission control. Mission control can be thought of interchangeably as Agent HQ. It is the visualization in github.com of how you interact with agents and how you interact with multiple agentic tasks. We have a little spiel on agentic workflows. I, as an EM, deal a lot with backlogs and triage and issue triage. And so agentic workflows are a real game changer for me. And then we're going to go through thinking in terms of using AI as a partner. How do I get the most out of it if I'm using it as an EM or a PM or somebody who maybe not in a day-to-day coding role? So using CCA to make PRs, and how can we go faster using it? How do we work? We work mostly in GitHub itself, and we work across a handful of other surfaces, VS Code, the CLI as it gains more popularity, and the agents panel or .com itself. We have a handful of entry points. There's the agents and repos tab. There is the actual /Copilot, the entry point, which we call mission control. And there's a few other places you can interact with agents on every GitHub page. Ideally, what you want to think about with CCA is an unbounded junior developer. They come with amazing potential. They never get tired, but they need an awful lot of direction and guidance to get things right. So one thing that we've noticed in how to accelerate ourselves in GitHub is to get very good on issue hygiene, get very good on plumbing and good architectural decisions. So the context we give CCA is a self-fulfilling loop. We can go in circles and go faster. To give you a real world example of going from 0 to fully PR merged using Copilot, here is an example of a PR I wrote a couple of weeks ago while I was in the middle of taking one-to-ones. The issue was really well described. It had been worked on by our PM, a developer, and our design lead. And essentially, we wanted to extend our rich plan UI. So we wanted to be able to extend the UI itself, to be able to work with the coding agent, to go back and forth on planning implementations, make it interactive, make it feel like you can ideate, and then work away. And so I started in the CLI. I supplied the URL of the issue itself. I gave a handful of descriptions of what I wanted my jobs to be done to look like, calling out some specific nitty-gritties, some context that I had in my head. And then I sent the CLI off to work. That job was delegated out to CCA. I went to my one-to-ones. About half an hour later, I checked back in. CLI was finished, CCA was complete. It had given me a link to a PR, 19 commits, 21 files, and it was kicking off Copilot review automatically. This for us, super effective workflow. CCA starts, it creates you a PR, it's automatically delegated to CCR. CCR is pretty effective. It knows generally the things to hone in on, and it's going to help point out your obvious flaws in your PR that you can dive right into before you have to send it to any of your teammates. And what we try and do inside is we encourage people to start with CCR a couple of times, make sure your pipeline is green, make sure you've gone through the basic review cycle with Copilot code review before you interject from another team member. I was able to then use Copilot itself. I had a couple of failing jobs. My lints were broken. There was a handful of things that weren't right. I have another one-to-one coming up. It's totally fine. Copilot, go fix, supply the context. Here's some reference PRs to check. Go to my one-to-one, come back, pipeline is green, test it locally. Everything looks good. Send it off to my teammates to review. PR merged. Not bad for somebody who essentially gets no time to code. And if you're using this as a tool and you can think about this as a feedback loop for yourselves, you can have multiple of these going in parallel at any given time. And that's what I want to encourage people to think about and how to go faster. It's our biggest unlock. Using the Copilot coding agent as an asynchronous tool, not something you're going to sit with synchronously. You can sit with individual sessions and steer, but really think about kicking off multiple jobs at a time. One thing that we have noticed internally, and I'm sure you have probably all noticed, the better your issues are written, the better your coding agent performs. Again, unbounded junior developers, infinite potential, really need some good guidance. The stricter you can get with jobs to be done, the stricter you can get with cross-referencing other artifacts, the stricter you can get with concrete outcomes and design specifications, the better your likelihood of one-shotting these things are going to be. And so we spend a lot of time being very strict about our issue descriptions. And it's a self-fulfilling positive feedback loop because the longer this goes on, we're able to then take good issue descriptions, feed them to our agentic workflows. It's able to generate better issue descriptions for us, running automatic triages, automatically kicks off CCA jobs. You can abstract away a lot of your own boilerplate. As an example, this one, we were pretty concrete about the components we wanted to work on and very concrete about the acceptance criteria. Cheat code for working with CCA, jobs to be done, or acceptance criteria written very clearly in your issues. So mission control and steering. I have kicked off a job. I've kicked off multiple jobs. I want to jump in. I want to steer. I want to work in parallel. It can be very tempting to think of coding agents and agentic workflows as single synchronous workflows. I would encourage people to step away from that thinking. We look at them as asynchronous workflows in GitHub. We generally will be working with many sessions in a given moment. I might be working with 4 or 5 in my CLI, 2 in VS Code terminals, and maybe 3 inside .com itself. Step into this world and start thinking about, I can have multiple sessions going at the same time, and I can be running these feedback loops. As you can see, there's quite a few entry points. I have links to the docs at the end to give you an example of like where to get the most out of this and where to dig in, running things in parallel. But we have a wide variety of surfaces you can interact with, and I'd really encourage people to try and use multiple. It's very common for any of our developers at any given time to have a VS Code, a CLI, and a .com instance all going at the same time. You can do things also like working out of code spaces. You can do things like jumping in and steering live right from .com if you feel like things have gone off the rails or you really want to get in and get hands-on with your PRs and with your coding agents. It's a very well understood pattern, and it's again something I'd encourage. So it is running with developers, and what we want to do is target every surface that a developer is on. We started with .com, we graduated to IDEs, VS Code, we're now seeing Steam with CLI. But what we really want to get into is being able to go where developers are and not necessarily lock people into one surface area. So we've been expanding the agents tab, real-time steering, open it in VS Code, whatever your clients are, some sneak previews of things we're working on at the moment that'll be coming in the next little while, steering directly from a mobile, being able to kick off sessions from your mobile, pick it up in your CLI, starting from your CLI, picking it up in .com. Give you a real-world example. We have a team stand-up at 9 a.m. every morning. Some of my developers commute. They start a session before they leave the house. They close their laptop and they check the session when they get to the office for their team meeting. Everything is just running away in the background. So again, it's this idea of seamless asynchronous workflows to really get the most out of the velocity. And this has for us anywhere between 20 to 50% increase in our velocity. Again, some examples, a sneak preview of a superpower. If you are working with the PR at Copilot, really helpful. We use it all the time. Again, just jumping straight into the UI, delegating the tasks directly to Copilot then and there in the comments, treating it exactly the way you would at another team member. Very common, we go back and forth with Copilot a handful of times before we ever send it to another team member, frees people up, leaves people solving real problems, the complex hard stuff, and we let Copilot automate away most of the stuff we would be otherwise caught spending time with. Here are some, again, concrete examples of me going back and forth. Even on the round 3, Copilot is pretty good. The more context you can get into GitHub, it even knew that my CI failure had nothing to do with the job I had written. I just needed to wait to rebase against main. Just saving time. I could have sent that off to a developer. That would have cost them time. It would have been a no-op anyway. So using Copilot code review, again, my suggestion is we use this all the time as our first round defense. Copilot code review is really well tuned to work with context in GitHub and to work with repositories. Getting this tandem team of CCA, so the agent, and then having it work back and forth with Copilot code review, absolute superpower. It is very good at catching issues that are either non-issues or can be easily extracted away. And it learns programmatically and from its own feedback of building on top of things that have come before. So it can be very, very useful as you get a linear log of commits in your repository. We use this exclusively as our first round defense. One trick that was called out to me by one of our developers in the CLI team that I've started, you can kick off 3 subsequent reviews on a PR with 3 different types of models from the CLI if you want to look for high signal patterns to avoid spending your time in places that maybe doesn't matter. Things like this, again, all very useful for just keeping the velocity high. So moving away a little bit from specific workflows into things that I, as an engineering manager, care about, spend a lot of time triaging, spend a lot of time, refining backlogs, spend a lot of time burning down issues that have gone stale. We can now use agentic workflows to automate a lot of way of that burden. How it works, you can set up your agentic workflows inside your .github workflow folder. They're triggered on either events or like schedules, like regular cron jobs. You can choose between the type of model, the agent that you want to kick off, Copilot, Claude, Codex. I would say we have a bias for Copilot, obviously. The tasks are written in just markdown files, full natural language. They're very easy to reason about. They're very easy to debug. They're very easy to step through. And they spin up in actions in the same way you would be used to running any action, essentially. For us, this has been really significant. We used to spend a lot of time trying to keep boards up to date, trying to keep metadata up to date, trying to stay in touch with our issues and not let things rot. Now I spend significantly less time on this during the week. Give you an example, we have a series of workflows that run in our own repositories. We have weekly issue triage, we have weekly status reports, but my favorite one is on every new issue opened, there's a triage that runs that determines whether or not the issue is well written and what needs to be updated so that it can be picked up with good context. And you can see, you can specify what issue or what repositories you want to be able to act on if you want the agent to then go off and take an action on the behalf of this outcome, which for us is the next step of this. And what labels is going to act on, what state does it need to act on. I've left a link to the GitHub agentic workflow documentation at the end. Fun fact, that documentation is all also Copilot written. So as an example, here's a real world example of this. A new issue was opened. We wanted to add a filter on a resource type. So our mobile team needed to be able to query for tasks with pull requests attached without having to basically integrate our whole UI. And the issue was logged. We specified what the acceptance criteria was. The triage ran, and we got a complexity score of 2. And so the benefit of being able to build on top of these workflows is if we had a complexity score of 2, we could automatically assign this issue to Copilot Coding Agent. I didn't even need to delegate this to anybody in the team. This is something that can be automatically fired off as a PR, and we can assign it out for review. So this was something that was 100% automated from start to finish. The only part that we had any engagement on was actually writing the issue, and we were able to completely automate away the rest. Now, I'm going to hand over to Claire about thinking with AI as a partner.
Just want to understand the demographic real quick. How many of you are developers here? Engineering managers? Okay, PMs? So mostly developers, okay. But I want to mostly talk about how, as an engineering manager, how I use Copilot on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of engineers always, ask this question in one-on-ones, is AI going to replace us? That's like one question that was asked the most in the past, I would say, couple years as a manager. I know there is a fear, I can see why people are asking those questions, but really AI, I look at it as more like a partner. It's like co-pilot. If anything, it really, really contributed to my productivity, even as a manager. So I wanted to share some specific use case today, how I use them. So first of all, my focus area as an engineering manager is really execution quality, developer productivity, and organizational clarity. I see execution quality as how quickly can we ship? How can a quality product, how quickly can you ship them? And how fast can we iterate them? And developer productivity, what kind of pain points do developers have when developing these products? And at organization level, do engineers know why they're working on certain things, right? So as a first use case, I'm all about protecting engineers' focus time. I know there are a lot of meetings, a lot of distraction and all those things, but in the past, before AI, engineering manager gets responsible for a lot of services. Or we get reorged to a new area, and all of a sudden I'm an owner for this service and I have no idea how it works. It used to be I have to grab senior or staff engineers or whatever, and really we have to deep dive on how it works and what are the blockers, what are the dependencies and risks and whatnot. But that's actually a pretty expensive meeting if you think about it. Staff engineer, thinking about how much you guys make an hour, it's really like taking 1 hour of your time every day. That gets pretty expensive. So as a manager, ever since Copilot, and the models are getting really, really good too. So as a manager, what I start doing is really deep dive on the services. And even if it's not really the service that my team owns, it's easy for me to go really, really deep on how the service works. So that's how I try to, that's one strategy for me to protect engineers' time by talking them less, and by asking better questions. So that's one way I start using Copilot quite a bit. And how many of you hates writing documentation? Probably everyone, right? Yeah, I know. And engineers used to have this excuse, it takes, this time to write a documentation. Now they don't have excuse because Copilot writes amazing documentation. So as an exit criteria for every project, I have checkmark documentation. It literally takes maybe 10 minutes of your time. Another use case, we used to have this availability champion. He was this engineer who's a senior level, And as an availability champion, he used to spend maybe like a week writing, summarizing all the incidents that happened, for the in the org, and writing and share the reports to the SLT, and answering all the questions and whatnot. It was a pretty tedious and very manual process. And one day he came to me and said he doesn't want to do it anymore because it's just too much. It's all writing docs, right? Instead, what we started doing was we actually created agent, to look at in the repo. There is a specific repo to basically create an issue every time there's an incident, why incident happened and how we mitigated them. So basically, it will automate the process of summarizing what happened for the given week for the incident. And now what we can do is, we can just share the report. I mean, of course, the availability champion has to review what was been written and the information, basically validate the accuracy of the information. But this process, it used to take maybe like a couple hours for him, I think, to prepare all these summaries and whatnot. And we got it reduced down to maybe like 20 minutes. So it was a huge productivity boost, and he continued to be the availability champ, which is really good for his basic visibility to SLT. So I noticed documentation has been benefiting from Copilot pretty highly in engineering. And last use case is, I'm just curious if it's just like us or not. How many of you open an issue, oh, this is an important problem, and never look at it? A lot, right? Like a lot. And sometimes I get shocked, like how some issues have been open more than 90 days or even like a year ago. And I'm pretty sure you guys opened it thinking this is a really urgent, like we must prioritize it and put it in the backlog, right? And it used to be a pain for engineering managers having to go through. So one time I got reorged and I started managing this new team. I opened the backlog and there was 300 open items. It was, at that time, Copilot was pretty new, so I couldn't really benefit from, using AI. I literally had to just nuke it. There's no way I could go through every single issues, for 300 backlog items. I just had to sort it for the most recent issues and prioritize them from there. However, now, AI is getting so good. On a weekly basis, I can triage basically what has been open and what has been open more than 90 days. And if context is not enough, then I can nudge the engineers based on this summary. Hey, these are, so first thing is priorities. If issue doesn't have a priority tag, and I have to make sure that it has a correct priority assigned. And if the priority is assigned, I look at the context and why it has to be prioritized. If the issue doesn't have enough details, then I can nudge the engineer to provide more context. That way we can get it prioritized. So my time to triage the backlog and the board has been significantly reduced ever since I started using Copilot there. Another use case I want to share is, I'm not sure how much of you guys deal with the situation, but sometimes there are very ambiguous asks from product team. I love my product, partners, they're great folks, but sometimes they'll say, so I had this situation where product team said, oh, rate limits are not working. It's not efficient. So I asked, what do you mean it's not efficient? It's not working. So what I had to do was a deep dive on how we are doing rate limits today, how it's implemented, and what are some area of improvements, what are the pros and cons and trade-offs, and I presented the options to product team. Then they were able to articulate what's not working well. So by using AI, I can be a better engineering partner, actually, instead of what are you asking? What's the requirement? I can actually explain very clearly how it works and what are the alternatives, and then what are the things that will benefit the product the most. So, I want you guys, I'm sharing this use cases, me as an engineering manager using AI, because you can nudge your managers as well, to incorporate AI more in day-to-day. I feel like managers have a huge influence on the AI adoption as a team for the developers. So that's why I want to share these use cases. Maya, thank you.
All right, so as part of the talk, I've dropped in a cheat sheet of resources. These are the most common patterns we use inside in GitHub in our teams. These are what we would consider our most important surface areas. I'm going to share the link to the presentation inside the Zoom. So it's just a PDF, you could download it. Again, there's links to everything. My big suggestion to everybody who is here this evening and really wants to unlock some good productivity here. You're here because, you're an adopter of AI and you want to get the most out of it. Try kicking off sessions multiple at a time from multiple surface areas and really trying to get that feedback loop between the coding agents, CCR, and then yourself going. You'll find that if you can get into this habit and build it like a muscle, you will really reduce the amount of overhead you're going to have on team members, and you're going to give yourself back a lot of time. That's how we steal back quite a lot of time ourselves, which is important for solving much harder problems. Follow on from the cheat sheet. Again, just some of the newest things. I've left a bunch of links. Specifically, my favorite link out of all of this would have to be either the skills or diving into managing agents. Again, we're now at the stage where we've moved into the world of agentic workflows and coordinating workflows and having multiple agents working together on your behalf and working across different surfaces. Trick to a very big unlock to give yourself back some time. And next up is the lab. So I'll hand back over to Dave and I'll share this in the Zoom. Thank you so much, everybody, for turning up. Appreciate you.
That Zoom, I'll put it up on
All
the
right.
presentation site.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen. But we'll hand back over to you, my friend. Oh, thank you very much.
All right. So we'll get things set up here so we can get started with the lab. So just take me a second. Make sure I get plugged in again. So don't get that warning about running out of juice. All right, so the people that work on our training and documentation and everything have done a absolutely fantastic job of putting together labs and things. There we go. So let me get back to my slides. All right, so hands-on labs. So what we're going to work through is what we have at the GitHub Copilot skills site. So if you go to learn.github.com/skills, leave that up there for a couple minutes. Oh, the Wi-Fi? Yeah, let me go back to the Wi-Fi code. If you GitHub, look for GitHub guest, Octocat 11 is the Wi-Fi. You're welcome. And yeah, once you go to github.com/skills, there's multiple labs to pick from there, but what I'm going to walk through this evening is expand your team with Copilot Coding Agent. Now, there is actually a couple of prerequisites. Hopefully everybody has a GitHub account, a GitHub handle, so you can log into GitHub. There is also the prerequisite of having either GitHub Copilot Pro or higher. So for individual accounts, that's GitHub Pro, GitHub Pro Plus. If you're getting your GitHub account through your company, it would be GitHub Copilot Business or GitHub Copilot Enterprise. And if you haven't signed up yet, if you go to, I'll go back to where you can see that link and pull up the page here. So what's going to be the easiest way for me to provide that link? Well, it's githubcopilot.com/features/copilot. It's probably the easiest thing to navigate to. So let me just go there. And then when you go to pricing, oh wow, why did it switch? Because let me go back to my other window here. There we go. I have my work GitHub account, and then I have a demo account that I use. So my demo account is always in dark mode. But yeah, if you go to the features page and then go to pricing, you'll see. So if you don't have a Copilot account, you can sign up for the trial for free. If you're an open source maintainer, you'll have GitHub Copilot available and things like that already. So actually, I want to go back here because on another tab, actually it is this guy. All right, so here's that github.com/skills. We're going to go into expand your team with Copilot. And I've actually already done that. That takes you to a repo. All right, and we've got instructions here that we'll walk through. So this is for developers of any experience level. You'll learn how to assign Copilot an issue, review Copilot's work, provide feedback to Copilot, and work on multiple issues in parallel. And we've got, since we're doing a hands-on lab here, we've got several people here to help out if you've got questions. So David, Gustavo, Sarah, is Tony in here? Yeah, we've got multiple people that can help. Hopefully, if you get stuck somehow, can get you past that. So we're going to provide GitHub Copilot access to the repository for the Marrington High School extracurricular activities website. And this is going to enable fellow teachers to make changes without needing to code directly. So it says, yes, you need the GitHub Copilot subscription, the introduction to GitHub, the getting started with Copilot. That's really just to build a base of knowledge. This lab is self-contained, so we can dive right into Copilot. But again, these are just some of the other labs that were referenced here, right? Getting started with Copilot and other things here. All right, so we're going to learn how to enable Copilot coding agent in your repository. We're going to assign an issue, and we're going to understand the agent's process. We're going to be able to watch everything the agent is doing. We're going to collaborate with the agent on code changes. Then we're going to customize and optimize the agent's workspace, because behind the scenes, the GitHub Copilot coding agent is actually running on GitHub Actions. And there's ways that you can customize that environment specifically for your needs. And then we're going to delegate and track multiple tasks in parallel. Now, the way we do this is this is just a GitHub repo that's got some automation built into it. But we're going to take this public repo and we're going to say, copy this exercise. So you're going to want to click on that button. It's going to ask you, so I'm just going to do this right in my DevOps 30, my own personal GitHub account. I've already done this once, so you can see I get a conflict there. So I'm just going to give that a number 01. And, you can add something else to that description if you want to for your, the description for this repository. We're saying we're starting with this template. It's going to be public. We're not going to ask Copilot to do anything just yet, but we're going to go ahead and create repository. So now that's going to create the repository in our own space. And we're going to have to, it's going to spin up, and then we want to give this about 20, 30 seconds. Because after about 20, 30 seconds, see, we see those same instructions and everything, but after about 20, 30 seconds or so, this README page should get updated, and then it's going to give us kind of step-by-step instructions to walk through and even, allow us to walk through this. One of the key things it's going to do is we may have to refresh the page here. Have I been talking long enough? Let's see. Let's refresh. There we go. All right. See how that README file has changed now. And now we've got go to exercise. So you can do that. All right. Was everybody able to create or do the copy template, create the repository and things? Awesome. Yeah. If you run into issues, raise your hand or say, hey, I need some help, and our proctors will help you out. All right. So welcome, Dave, to your skills exercise. So go ahead and read along. I don't have to, I'm not going to necessarily read every word here, but in this step, we're going to check the work and guide you forward, share helpful tips and resources, and celebrate the progress. The first thing we're going to do is enable the Copilot coding agent and get that going. And so read through this here. There's a screenshot of what the website looks like. So yeah, you can see this is a website for a high school where kids can go and sign up for extracurricular activities and see is it's, before school at 7 a.m. or after school at 4 or 5 p.m. or whatever, and things like that. So there's, we want to add some new items here on this spreadsheet, because this is just it's just kind of a hard-coded web page, but that's fine. This will still be a good example. So we'll see that we can use Copilot in the editor. We can use it for issues and pull requests. We can do it with local files right in the repository. We can do inline code suggestions, issue assignments. We can pull in custom instructions to help us out here. And we've got MCP support. And in this case, we're kind of doing vibe coding. Now, to be honest, working with enterprise customers so much, I'm not a fan of that term vibe coding, right? I mean, I don't think your CTO doesn't necessarily want to know that you're making updates to your e-commerce website right before Cyber Monday and just saying, yep, I just handed this over to AI and said, I just vibe coded, the new credit card processing for for those credit card updates to our e-commerce site. No, I think your CTO and CISO and everybody's going to want to say, no, you really should have some human overview, some human review there to look at all of that. All right. So the way this works is, a contributor, you, is going to select an issue, assign it to Copilot. Copilot's going to go create a branch behind the scenes, do all the work in that branch, and even kind of review its own code. It's kind of one agent reviewing another agent's work and maybe make some updates, and then put it out there for review. But the reviewer, you, will have to approve that pull request before it can get merged into your main branch. All right. So, yeah, so is this safe? Sure. Security precautions have been implemented to help reduce security concerns. There's a few limitations you might need to consider when asking Copilot to work on an issue. Copilot can only make changes on the branch it created. Copilot can't reach out and directly make changes to the main branch, or, there's multiple branches currently open, it's not going to reach out to some other branch and randomly do work there. We provide constraints. There's a configurable firewall. So depending on like what MCP tools you're using and things, you can restrict what's doing and other things. All right. So we're going to, let's see, pretty soon. Let's see. Did I miss that part already? We should be. Maybe I'm not there yet. Oh, right. Yes, we want to make sure the Copilot coding agent is enabled on our repository. Now, what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to copy this link. Go over here, and this might be a good thing for you to do as well. So now I'm just going to go to look at the code here, but using Windows, I'm going to snap these guys side by side so I can have my instructions here and my working repo here. So what it's going to have us do is double check our settings. And if I go down to Copilot, coding agent, check the repository access is set to all repositories. They're going to let me, do I need to? There we go. Yep, so my access is set to all repositories. So I know I'm not going to run into any roadblocks or anything there. All right, so we want to look at creating an issue now and say, hey, there's a missing activity on that web page, Manga Maniacs. So we'll copy that. And we are going to go, actually I'm going to go to our issues, say new issue. Oh, am I in? I am not in the right repository. Yep, we got to make sure we are in. Yeah, because when I went to my settings, that's what happened. So go back to my account, my repository. There's the O1 repository. There we go. Issues. New issue. We'll paste in that title we got from over there. Now we can also copy that description and paste right in here. How we doing? Everybody following along here? Awesome. We'll create that issue. Click the create button. Now we want to assign the issue. So in my case, I don't have too many options to assign to. It's not like I have a team of 100 other developers that I'm working with. So here we can easily find Copilot as who we want to assign the issue to. So I'm going to go ahead and assign that to Copilot. And yep, I don't need to provide any other instructions or anything there. And a beautiful way, or the beautiful thing about the way our skills team and our training team set all this up is, as we go through and, do things like this, it's going to come back and there we go. Now we're seeing updates here already. All right, everything's perfect. So now we can move on to step 2, collaborate with Copilot. All right, so we've assigned Copilot the issue. So Copilot also started a pull request and linked it to our issue. So now we see this work in progress pull request here. And if we, let's see, do we want to look at the pull request? Provides transparency. Yep, the description will be continuously updated as Copilot progresses. So if I look at that pull request, there we can see Copilot already went into the description and said, yep, this is what we are doing. Hey, just for your reference, here's the original prompt, the information that I pulled from that issue, et cetera. And that description is going to continuously get updated as it's going through things. But that's the pull request. But we can also see, if we scroll down here, you're going to see a view session button. So if we click on that view session button, then we can see exactly what the Copilot coding agent is doing. We can see it automatically started working with the GitHub MCP server and the Playwright MCP server. Those are MCP servers that we provide by default. It already started working with a sub-agent here. So it's exploring the structure and how activity clubs are stored, testing the framework, what's the test framework and location. So you can follow through and really see a lot of details about what the coding agent is doing and also see some of its, the decisions that it's making along the way and everything. So yeah, you can do that live, watch the logs in real time, or you can go step away, get a cup of coffee, have lunch, jump in the car, go back home, come back and look at this later when Copilot says, okay, that pull request is ready for your review. So yeah, we can even steer things as we go. You can see down here, it says, hey, we can steer active session while the agent is working. So if you see Copilot is starting to go down a path that's not exactly what you want, you can come in here and say, hey, at Copilot, we need to take into account better scalability or whatever the issue that you identified might be, kind of a thing. So being able to steer Copilot in real time. So yeah, Copilot's work is done on a branch that always starts with Copilot. So now if I go and look at all of the available branches, we're going to see this Copilot add Manga Maniacs. Am I saying that right? As the new branch kind of a thing. We've got safeguards in there. Copilot can't just automatically trigger actions workflows. A human has to say, yeah, it's okay for actions workflows to run on this. We are working to make that optional because we know sometimes that can kind of hold things up, kind of a thing. But you can decide then how much control do you want versus how much do you want to just let it go, kind of a thing. Rule sets and similar protections are still enforced. So if you've got rule sets set up to say we need 2 reviewers on every pull request, that's still going to come into play. Rule sets that say, yep, we're going to run our linting tools or whatever as part of a GitHub Actions workflow. Those kind of things are still going to run, et cetera. All right, so let me go back to that pull request. Let's see where we're at. All right, there. So yeah, it's updated the description again because it's got that code block in there saying, hey, here's what I want to add for the description and the schedule details and everything. We already saw we can scroll down and view session. Yep, that we see the journal of the Copilot's work in that session and everything. That's where we can monitor things. All right, so now Copilot is done. And so it's saying that we're requesting your review. So, yep, so now then we can proceed to this next activity. So what we're going to do now, Little bigger. All right, so you should have an add your review button up at the top. We go in there, we see the actual code changes now. And let's say we're not exactly happy with that description. So I'm going to go in there and say, okay, what comment do you want to make on that description? And I'm going to copy the suggested comment. And you'll notice in that comment, it says at Copilot. So we're responding directly back to Copilot to say, please change this description to be inspired by Japanese manga. It needs more personality to attract more students. So then when we say start a review, should get the little emoji pop up with a couple of eyeballs. Now, this didn't show up at first when I went through this morning, but when you see that emoji on there, that's Copilot saying, okay, I'm taking a look at this now. Yeah, if it doesn't pop up here, but if I go back to the conversation and scroll down to the bottom of the conversation, okay, we started a review. Give this a moment. We should see Copilot pop back in here and pick that up and start working on that change.
I have a question while reading.
Sure.
Is there ever the case where it comes back and asks for clarifying questions, or does it always just try to attempt it?
I think it will come back with clarifying questions. David or Sarah? Question was, when you ask Copilot to do some additional work, some additional steering, will it come back and ask you clarifying questions? It depends.
I see, okay.
Okay. Actually, what I ran into this morning, I'm not sure if just pasting Copilot in there, it didn't pick that up. So let me very explicitly summon Copilot there.
That's usually better.
Pizza time. Yeah, part of a 2-pizza team. Okay, Copilot. Okay. So this did get updated, so it recognized, okay, after a moment, Copilot will start working on it. Click the view session button that will appear. Let's see. Oh no. Is anybody else getting? Oh, did I not? Ah, okay. Yeah, I thought I said. Didn't I do that? I thought I hit. Oh, I thought I hit add review. Oh, I know. Submit review. Yes, yes, yes. I added the comments. You're right. I added the comments and then I didn't say request changes. Yes. Yes. There we go. There we go. Copilot started work on behalf of DevOps 30 now. So there we go. So yeah. So now we can see that new session and everything and see it getting started. And if we catch this in time, we could add another comment in here to steer it. And in this case, it's saying, hey, there's a slight change of plans. We got a bigger classroom assignment. We need to move this to 5 p.m. in the afternoon and bump up the attendance cap from 15 to 25 or whatever the previous was. So the idea there is you catch it while it's still working and be able to steer and adjust it, kind of a thing. All right, so we're going to let Copilot finish these changes, and there we go, updated description comment. Yep, dive into the vibrant world of Japanese manga, from epic shonen battles to heartfelt slice of life tales. So yes, we have a much more engaging description there now. All right, so now we've got, that's the session. Let's go back to the pull request. So we've done everything we want to do here. So now we can go all the way down to the bottom here and say, yep, we want to go ahead and merge that pull request. We're going to confirm merge, and you can see Copilot's putting in, some suggestions there for the description and everything. There we go. And we're already we can move on to the next step. So we've assigned Copilot the issue. You can see it also started the pull request. This was what we did. Yep. Yeah, this kind of keeps jumping back and forth as it comes in and updates things. There we go. Now we're going to move on to preparing Copilot's environment. So let's provide some additional info about the school and typical tasks teachers requests. And the thing is, we're going to, we could do this with Copilot instructions. So we're going to look into that a little bit, look at repository specific guidance and preferences and context before Copilot starts reasoning. We can also see there the project overview and goals, any relevant background information we might want to include, and things like that. So what we're going to do here is that file. Let's see, where does it say? Somewhere here it says where that file is going to live. Well, I know where it's going to live. So we're going to go into the code, and we want to create a new branch. So that new branch name is going to be prepare environment. So here's our instructions for creating that new branch. Create that new branch from main. Now we're going to navigate to GitHub Copilot or .github Copilot instructions.md. You can see right now there really isn't much in there. So we're going to replace the placeholder with this text that's in our script. So we'll go in and edit this file. And we could also add some additional information about school and teachers to help Copilot interact more naturally. Take a look at that. And you can see it's just natural language, right? It's in Markdown, but it's just natural language, right? So, but here we're kind of saying what the program architecture is, website, users, and the website are users are students and teachers. Make sure the user experience is simple. Do not make additional apps or services. We want everything contained right here. Do not make any command line tools. So yeah, that's one of the things about Copilot instructions. You want to tell it what you want it to do. You also want to tell it what to stay away from, right? Because if you're ambiguous with AI, it could go off and, do all kinds of things. So you want to be pretty explicit with the instructions and things. All right, so when we're finished, we're going to say commit changes because we're in this branch. Copilot's thinking. Copilot does a pretty good job usually of coming up with descriptions and commit messages and stuff. Now, make sure you're committing to that prepare environment branch, because I know I was walking through this morning and almost committed directly to main. All right, so now we want to go in and we're going to create a new file under the GitHub workflows directory. All right. Again, make sure you're on the prepare environment branch, because it tends to go back to main when you go back to code. So GitHub or .github workflows. We're going to come over here and say create new file. We're going to go copy that file name. And this is a special name in this case for Copilot setup instructions. And then we can just copy all of this right from the instructions again. But what it's going to do, some things like set up Python and install Python dependencies, and some things like that. So making sure that our environment gets spun up quickly right at startup for every Copilot coding agent. And does it? Yep, I'm going to commit the changes. Commit directly to that branch. And we'll go ahead and create the pull request. If we go to the pull request tab, compare and pull. And in the description here, this is where I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to have Copilot generate a summary for me. It's going to do this in a couple of seconds. As a developer, I'd probably just slam something in there and said, yeah, I made the Copilot environment better or something like that. But Copilot actually does a pretty nice job in just a matter of seconds of coming up with a decent description for me there. So I'm going to create the pull request. And okay, but do not merge it yet. Mona is going to check our files so the little helper here for the lab is going to check our files and make sure everything looks fine. So there we go. Nice. All right. Looks like we passed. Mona says we passed with flying colors here. All right. So we provided the instructions file and everything. Yeah, it kind of bounces around a little bit. Whoop. Bounces around a lot in some cases. So let's go down. Okay, so now, yes, I remember right. It added manage multiple tasks with the agent panel. Okay, so we've got that. Does it want us to merge that pull request? I believe it does. So let's go ahead and merge that pull request because some of the next steps are going to use those Copilot setup instructions, if I recall correctly. Yep, now with the workspace prepared, let's work on some more complex issues. And we're going to be able to delegate from multiple places here. One of those places is the Copilot agents panel. So up here at the top, you'll see we can chat with Copilot, or we can bring up just the agents panel, which is kind of a mini view of what we call mission control, where I can prompt right here and assign tasks to Copilot, or I could even assign it to Claude. If I had custom agents, those would show up here. I can pick my model and everything. I can see what agents are currently working and everything right from here. Or I could go to that full agents panel and see all of the agents that were working there. But in this case, I'm just going to stick with the little pop-up there. All right. So let's see, there should be a prompt in here. Yep. Assign Copilot to work on the following task. Integrate social sharing buttons so that users can easily share activities. So we'll do that. Paste that guy in there. Actually, I'm going to take that hard line break out of there. There we go. I'm just going to let auto model selection happen for now. But yeah, I could pick, Gemini or GPT 5.4 or Claude or whatever I wanted to there. Yep, and then we see that working. All right, so if we click on the task, it'll jump straight into the session logs for that guy, and we can follow along, and we should see, that it's setting up Python and doing the dependencies and everything for us, since we merged that into the main branch and everything. Clearing the airspace for traffic. There you go, set up Python, install Python dependencies, etc. So we can already see the fruits of that work from earlier. All right, so we'll let Copilot work on that. Now we're going to assign 2 issues simultaneously. So we only had 1 or 2 issues out there to begin with, but Mona, while we were doing that, created some additional issues for us. So if we go to the Issues tab, we want to focus in, oh, there it is. We want to focus in on the issues for difficulty tracks and dark mode. So there's dark mode. There's difficulty tracks. Now, under assignee, Copilot's right there. So I'm going to say I'm going to assign those to Copilot. Copilot to assign 2 issues to Copilot. There we go. And then Copilot is off and running. Yeah, so now another place we can go, there's now an agents tab up here. This was added just within the last month or 2, I believe. But from here, I can go and also see all the agents that are working. And I can, oh, here's my filter. I can see, do I want to see just the agents created by me? Or do I want to see all sessions within this repository? So if you got multiple people working within the repository at the same time, which you're typically going to have on any of your work, right? You can kind of see what other agents are doing at the same time. So, all right, so Mona should be preparing for our final review here. Actually, while we're watching that, is everything going okay for everybody out there? Anybody get hung up on things? Yes, you got hung up, or yes, it's going okay? How'd you get hung up? Yeah, I was gonna say, we've got people here to help. Here comes Sarah. Here comes Sarah. Yep. Anybody else? We've got other people back here that ready to help.
I have a question.
Okay, yep.
So you can do this workflow with pull requests and issues. Is it also really connected to the project manager built into GitHub.
So yes, so that's issues, but then yes, you also have projects where you can create the different boards
Yeah.
and things. Yeah, so that under the hood, that's issues. So when you get to a project, you can open the issue and then say assign it to Copilot.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Yep. Yeah, I wonder, did it spin up any? No. But if I just, okay, go ahead. Actually, I have an example here. Oh. Oh, yep, I have to get signed in here to Azure Boards, but I have an example here. So I came to GitHub by way of Microsoft. So yes, I was a Azure DevOps subject matter expert, consultant, et cetera, for many years before getting deep into GitHub. So yes, I can go into my boards in Azure Boards. And if I look at this user story here, create a multi-select breed filter dropdown. Yes, now from here, I'll zoom in. You can say, create a pull request with GitHub Copilot. And then it's going to pop up a dialog for you here and give you the options. In this environment, I've got a couple of custom agents set up. So I could assign it to just the general Copilot, or I could assign it to one of these custom agents. And then the same thing, it's going to go off in GitHub and create the pull request and everything. And cancel out of there because I actually already did that. If we go down and look at the discussion, we can see this was on February 23rd at 4:49. It said, okay, I'm going to create this draft pull request and do all of my work. So 4:49, 4:58, so 9 minutes later, it came back and said, okay, everything's done. And it even puts it shows up in the discussion, but you've got a durable link over here as well. And now I can go see all of the work. Here's the pull request in GitHub. And it should be referencing. So yeah, and the beauty of it, it's already using the Playwright MCP server. So it'll drop in screenshots and point out things like, okay, here's that breed filter drop down that I added for you. Here's another view of it expanded and give you all that. So yeah, that's how you would use it with Azure Boards. And that's generally available. We just had in public preview being able to do that with Jira as well. How it's connected to boards? Yeah, when you set that up, there's a couple of different things. You in your GitHub apps, you will wire it into Azure Boards, and then on the GitHub or on the Azure Board side, you say you're integrating with GitHub and all of that.
So it's all self-configurable then?
Yeah. Just a few steps to walk through to get it set up and configured. Yep.
Doesn't it has to be enabled to use that?
MCP is enabled by default.
In our organization, MCP servers disabled.
Okay. Yeah, then it'll probably still work. You might not just get those screenshots because you're not going to have Playwright, right? So yeah, it may limit some of the things that are done. All right, so let's go. Is this where we were? Okay. Did Mona update us here? Oh, okay, we have to go merge one pull request. Okay, so let's go back to our, okay, one of them's, the first one's done. Integrating social sharing functions. There's our session information. We can go say view the pull request. Lots of good information in there. Pretend that I thoroughly went through this, to make sure it's well reviewed and everything. And then I'm going to say add review. And I will actually approve this review and use my little shortcut to say looks good to me. Whoops. If I use the right shortcut, looks good to me, go ahead and ship it. So that's going to complete the review. And then with the review completed, we can now merge the pull request. And that should make Mona happy. Yeah, so you can see there's multiple ways to fire off multiple agents. Yep, that one just finished, created a pull request. Implementing difficulty levels is done. There we go. All right, so we've completed this exercise. And, yep, took less than an hour. But you can see, so this one we did pretty much all right on github.com itself. Some of those other labs there, so let me go back here. Some of these other labs, like getting started with GitHub Copilot, you get into like using, actually, I'm going to go to, I started this one last night or this morning, whenever it was. Getting started with GitHub Copilot. So when you go through and do this one, is my code space still out there? Okay, I thought I had created code space. Everybody know what code spaces are? Okay, code space is Visual Studio Code running inside the browser, and it's running in the cloud, right? But you essentially get a full running copy of Visual Studio Code that's already connected to your repository. And there's ways where there is a special file, well, that'll pop up in a minute. There's a devcontainer.json file that you can say for every code space that we open up in this repository, here's the Visual Studio Code extensions I want you to launch. Here's our debug strings for connecting to databases and other things. So you can have this self-contained environment. So as new developers coming on board, rather than pointing them to some wiki page that says, here's all your setup instructions, no, it's click on create code space, and you can have different dev containers, configured and everything. So it's all customized and everything. But yeah, so you can onboard somebody extremely quickly, and also from a laptop perspective, actually, if I go in here, I can say new with options. And depending on what your enterprise allows, because they can configure like what size machines are available, you can select different size machines. It can even be, this is just my personal account, so this tops out at 16 core, but it can even go higher than that kind of a thing. But so yeah, you can very much customize. So I just have the one dev container here and everything. But yeah, you can customize these things to spin up the environments. Where I was going with this with the labs is some of these labs will have you go through and do things in Copilot chat in Visual Studio Code, but since you do it through the code space, you don't have to worry about whether or not your personal Visual Studio Code is properly configured, has the right versions of the extensions, or you don't have to worry about it stepping on your day-to-day Visual Studio Code environments and settings and things. All right, so that gets us through. Yeah, that gets us through that exercise. I definitely encourage you to go check out some of these other labs and everything. And this is, again, this is the main URL is learn.github.com/skills. So easy enough to remember. And yeah, you can find all kinds of labs there. Kudos to our education and training team, the way they've set these things up. Because I know there's so many labs, people try to set them up, but you know, you run things on your own machine and they maybe don't account for the fact that you haven't updated, you know, hopefully you're automatically updating Visual Studio Code or whatever. Maybe you're sitting on an older version of Visual Studio Code and this lab has to do with some brand new feature that's not yet in your version. And so you stall out going through the lab or run into other technical issues. But you know, kudos to our education team for making these things run smoothly. Were you able to get past the issue? Not really? Ooh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, with that, I'm still here. David's still here. Any other questions, comments? Sure.
How well do the agents help with, say, Git workflow, like rebase and language conflicts, things like that?
It definitely should be able to help. I haven't done that so much myself, you know, merging conflicts and stuff. But
You know, 5 agents don't leave, they all have to take out the version.
oh, I see what you're saying. That's another area where we've done a lot of work recently on the platform itself. Because when we get into really large enterprises, there's always that kind of that merge war that goes on, right? So batching merges and merging pull requests and things like that. So we've made a lot of improvements there, which should lessen the likelihood of running into major problems because you've got multiple agents working on the same code at the same time and all that.
I have a kind of similar question, which is, or kind of built on that, but is there maybe different patterns to think of when using multiple agents with how we structure or break down the problem and kind of feed it into the agents? Than what we would do if we were just getting them.
I'm gonna let David, do you have a thought on that?
Okay, so when you're solving problems that have multiple agents, and we need, like, is there a different way to be thinking about how to approach and solve those problems than we would if we're in coding? And I'm building off of if you do that, you can learning multiple agents of word conflicts in PRs generated at the same time.
Yep. Okay. So the way we get around that, if you're parallelizing multiple agents, is that we start with a really good upfront definition of a plan. And CCA is actually a very good starting point for that. You can work with CCA to define out a really well fleshed out step-by-step plan with specific steps for each agent and be very crisp in how you want to describe context handoffs. Some basic tips: each agent should do one thing, do it really well, and not attempt to handle multiple things at the same time. Try and stay away from that like God agent anti-pattern.
So you're referring to custom agents, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
If you've got multiple things scaffolded at the same time. So just really honing in on building out a really well fleshed out implementation plan and being very specific about what step each agent needs to take and how you go back and rethink about failures within that and how you would retry it. That's what we've seen to be pretty successful for working with a fleet of agents or a swarm of agents.
Okay, so like in the past, looking at this, if you're working on a task, by the time one task planning, the implementation, they can write the unit tests, and then they can do a lot of verification. Are those things that need to be split off early?
Generally, yes, you'll find there's more success in having a planning step, aka a planning agent, having a specification step, having a testing step, having a coding step, having a review step. That's what we've seen to be the most success versus mixing those things and just being very, very concrete in the handoffs, just supplying a lot of context. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, so let me ask this, because this is one of the first, we mentioned at the beginning, we are going to be doing this in multiple cities, right? And you can see if you go to the Copilot Dev Days repo, you can see the calendar for where we've scheduled these now. I think we're doing this over the course of the next month. There's even a map where we're doing these things. Was this lab helpful to you? Did you feel like this was fairly easy to navigate by using the GitHub skills and everything? Okay, good.
I can give this to someone else to take a look at.
Okay,
Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and this was the discussion topic today.
Yep.
Assigning tasks like this, would you do this or not? Or would you just use Copilot in your coding room?
Right. And yeah, there's a lot of discussion these days about what kind of tasks are best for Copilot. Bug fixes, accessibility. I mentioned the app modernization stuff. I need to update to the latest version of .NET. That's toil on developers and stuff. Developers, and you want your developers working on like new features and maybe expanding the scalability and stuff like that, as opposed to just working on little nits, little bugs and things like that. So yeah, those things that are very well scoped, very well defined, are very good candidates to give off to the coding agent. But if you've got something more complex, that's probably where you want your architects and senior developers and people really in the loop and everything.
Would it be possible to pop the URL for that, the other slide back on the screen?
Oh, yeah. Actually, let me.
Use that.
All right, you put that in. You put that in the Zoom chat, David?
Do you want me to send it to you on
There we
Slack?
go. GitHub
Got it.
Copilot. So, awesome. David did the same thing I did. He created, so his handle is OregonD, so organd.github.io/presentations. And then here's his presentation for tonight. And let me do this as well. I can pop up the QR code for that. If you want to grab it that way, would that be? You're welcome. Yeah, I love that feature. Being a Microsoft guy, yes, I use Edge, but it's so easy to just right click and say QR code. I know you can do it in Chrome, but I think it's maybe a menu option or two down. It's not just right there kind of a thing. So.
I want to know if there's a way to move Azure Springboard over to GitHub. Are they linked, or is it actually you can transport that over?
You want to move what over to GitHub?
Move Azure Springboard information.
Oh, Azure Sprint, so Azure DevOps Sprint boards.
Yeah.
What we're actually, let me do this. One of my other presentations.
The question in the meantime, do you think it's going to move away?
No, Azure DevOps is not going to go away. So there was this session here, and actually I'm going to go to the session. So yes, if you go to GitHub.com/Dave Burnison MS/presentations. That's the QR code that I brought up earlier. Less than a month ago. What's today? March 17th, less than a month ago. I co-presented with Dan Hellam, who is the project manager for Azure Boards. Hold on, I'll go right to this website. So this was a Microsoft Reactor where we talked about the current state and future state with GitHub and Azure DevOps. The thing is, there's so much functionality in Azure Boards that doesn't exist in GitHub Issues and Projects. The configurable dashboards, the built-in hierarchy of epics, features, user stories, tasks, the turning queries into charts and things like that. GitHub right now is, our resources are focused on things like Copilot, GitHub Actions, etc. We don't want to take resources off of that just to bring parity to Azure or GitHub Issues and Projects. So we're working with the Azure DevOps team to create tighter and tighter integrations, better integrations with Azure Boards and Azure Pipelines. And that's what we talk about in this webinar.
So they kind of link, or is that? Okay.
Yep. And when it was asked about, can I assign a user story from Azure Boards, I brought up that example and everything. That was an example of that integration. Yep. Yeah, because even, and we are coming up on time. We have an 8 o'clock curfew, so this is going to end real fast here. But when I go in, and if I'm on a user story in Azure Boards, I can go in here now and, where's it at? Isn't it there? Oh, I already have the branch created. I can say I want to create a branch right from here on GitHub. And at that point, when I connect like a user story or a bug to a branch in GitHub, it's going to automatically link the pull request when it gets created and all that. So yeah, we're trying to keep that nice deep integration. So if I go and look at this pull request, yep, it's always going to be a link. Here's the pull request. If I could go look at all of my checks down here, you can see we're still using Azure Pipelines to do our linting and run tests and things. And I can dive into, the actual Azure Pipelines details from here. So now I'm jumping back, to Azure Pipelines. Oh, that build aged out. Let me see if I've got any current ones here. Yeah. So there's the GitHub pull request on the Azure board side. So yeah, we can seamlessly go back and forth, between Azure board or Azure DevOps and GitHub and everything. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We've got all the resources you need. I'm sure Bill or Josh will be putting the recording out there, and providing the links through Discord. Reach out through the Seattle AI Camp Discord channel if you have any questions, or look me up on LinkedIn. But thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thursday, I think I should.